Thank you so much for staying with us. And as promised, right after BBC's Money Daily, I was going to get into this conversation on real estate 2020. What are the trends in Kenya and what have we seen? Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta has committed through the Big Four agenda to build 500,000 affordable houses by 2022. Given the housing deficit and many more factors, let's talk further into real estate. And joining me is Ruben Kimani, the CEO of Username Investment Limited, which is a Kenyan real estate development and investment company. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Kimani.
Thank you so much for your invitation.
All right.
Glad to be here.
Fantastic.
Yes.
So even as we get into the conversation, what are the trends that you've noted that are going to take over the real estate sector in 2020?
Okay. My name is Ruben Kimani, CEO Username Investment Limited. Glad to be here. 2020, some people are calling it the beginning of a new decade. This means that people have goals, they want to do something in their lives, but where real estate is concerned, I consider housing especially as one of the basic needs, and some people will call it a human right. I consider it a serious need, and I expect this year, just like many years that have passed, people will start looking for mechanism to ensure they own their houses. Just to bring this to a closer perspective, we have been talking about an accumulated shortage of 2 million houses. That shortage is not going anywhere until we find a solution to fix it. So we'll get, and the increase is usually 200,000. We'll get more people trying to find ways of looking for places to live. And in this regard, you'll find that majority of Kenyans are not the ones who have so much money in the bank. They don't have so much of those big incomes. Actually, I checked the statistics. Like 79,000 Kenyans earn less than 100,000 Kenyan shillings. So we are talking about majority who cannot be able to afford housing worth millions. So I expect more Kenyans will continue moving to satellite towns. Satellite towns will continue growing. I'm talking about places like Gong area, that whole region. Places like Kangudo Road, where every Kenya is buying a plot. Places like Mombasa Road, and maybe past Limuru. People will start looking for places where they can build houses. Over the year, people have bought plots, and this is where we ask the government, please do infrastructure they have been doing so that people can start building houses there. The other thing I also expect is the issue of the Big Four agenda, the housing. The government has been, and we need to clap where need be. They have been laying the foundation that is needed to do the 500,000 houses. This thing is not possible by 2022, let us be honest. But what they are doing is something that will traverse generations. I think the peers of housing was talking about they completed 270-something houses only out of 500,000, but I'm not looking at that. I'm looking for the fact that the framework that is being laid can be used by successive governments. Okay. This might be a 10-year plan, meaning that the Kenya, for example, the issue of financing, the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company, the issue of doing infrastructure as many places as possible, the issue of trying to ensure that financing is easier for the majority of people who either do small businesses or work in Kenya. So these are foundation. So I expect this year, finally, you'll have more of such projects coming up for affordable housing, okay, because the government has started putting in place measures.
So you say it's more the longevity of the plan as opposed to, the deliverables by that particular year.
Yes.
But even as we talk about the housing deficit, as you've mentioned, it grows by 200,000 units annually is the statistic. In recent years, the country has managed to add like about 30,000 units to the housing stock annually. It's also estimated there, compared to the deficit, it's not obviously meeting that. But even as you mentioned the Big Four agenda and President Uhuru Kenyatta's focus on the affordable housing, how do you think the private sector plays into furthering that agenda?
Basically, private sector, if you look at it that way, they have the biggest experience in this sector, maybe more than the government, more than any other person. And for me, I find experience as the most important thing. We have something called public-private partnerships that I think should be encouraged, because if you look at our cities, There's so much land that is not being used in some places, but very, very expensive. This land is most likely owned by some individuals or companies in the private sector. If you have a corporation where the government can assure me that I can be able to buy all the houses that I developed using a certain plan, you'll find that most developers will take up this plan. Let me tell you the challenge. In business, you look at capability to be able to make profit. Let us start from there. If I have some land somewhere that is very prime, and then I realize after building the houses, I may not be able to make any profit. I may make a loss, and it is so difficult, and no one will be there to buy, because if you look at majority of Kenyans, they may not be able to afford even the mortgages. So what I do, I'll stop doing that, and most likely I'll develop high-end housing where I can be able to recoup my investment and make profit. So if you can have a plan where these are an assurance, 100% assurance that these units can be taken up by government, is much easier. So the other thing the private sector can be able to do is maybe the aspect of giving what I would call is like consultancy of sorts. We have the government trying to push this agenda so hard. There are people who already know what can be done, can be able to turn this button and be able to offer solutions to the problem that are facing our people.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and for delving a little bit deep into, of course, the real estate sector in the country right now.